I'm Marissa Semkiw. Thanks for watching. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. That's the topic of tonight's byline. Have you ever seen one of those hipsters walking down the street donning one of those iconic Che Guevara t-shirts? You know what I'm talking about. And if you're like me, you wonder, how is it that Che Guevara, this dead Marxist radical, could become a superhero to so many? Well, the truth is, most of these people have no clue who Che Guevara actually was. To them, he's just a brand, an iconic image. I wonder if they knew they were wearing the shirt of a terrorist, a sadistic butcher who got off on torturing people. I wonder if they'd take it off. Now, more recently, I had a similar experience at a restaurant in Toronto called Pravda. Pravda, like the infamous propaganda rag of the Soviet Union that was ironically named Truth. That's what Pravda means in Russian. Plastered all over the walls were tacky portraits of propaganda posters from the Soviet Union. In fact, right when you walk in, there's a three-piece sort of 10-foot by 10-foot massive poster board of Lenin on the wall. Now, as someone whose grandparents escaped Ukraine in the 1930s under Soviet rule, I was somewhat offended. So naturally, I decided to interview the owner. Tell me about what reception's like for you guys.
Reception's been great. Our biggest endorsement has been actual Russians that have come in and been wowed by the place and have a feeling that they're in Russia, which was our ultimate goal. We've had people from Canadian backgrounds that were, impressed because they never really knew the Soviet era, but definitely wowed.
What were they wowed by? The portraits of men responsible for the starvation and liquidation of millions of people? Men whose policies led to exposure, overwork, and disease? Not to mention the camps and mass executions, not unlike under Nazi Germany. But I did notice that there was one obvious absence from the wall, and that was Stalin.
We actually used to have a plaque of Stalin up that we decided just to take down. There was such mixed reviews. I know the Russians think of him somewhat as a popular person, but a lot of people equated him almost as a Hitler.
Now, to be fair, in terms of death count, he's not equal to Hitler, he's worse. Hitler killed 6 million Jews, Stalin killed 20 million people. So they had the common sense to take down Stalin, but not the pictures of other monsters. Even though it was a Soviet-themed vodka bar, they even had a picture of Mao on the wall. Mao, the man responsible for the deaths of 65 million people. And of course, they had Khrushchev and Brezhnev, and a little bit of Gorbachev for good measure. But the face most common was Lenin. So what about Lenin? Some like to pretend Lenin was somehow a noble, well-intentioned figure whose project was just messed up by his successor, Stalin. No, this is Lenin who perpetrated the campaign of Red Terror throughout Russia. Molotov, who served both Lenin and Stalin, actually said that Lenin used to scold Stalin for softness and liberalism. Stalin did not think up anything that wasn't there under Lenin. The purges, the systematic torture, the work camps, none were contrary to the principles preached by Lenin. So by hanging his picture on the wall, isn't he glossing over the bloody history of communism?
You know what? We didn't think as deeply into the political consequence.
Oh, you didn't think deeply into the political consequences. Well, what about creating a Nazi-themed beer hall? Would that be appropriate?
Definitely not, no. Hitler was a hero to almost no one, and he was never endorsed after the war, even by Germans. Unlike Stalin, people still believe in the communist theme, even though it failed in practice, but definitely not the same thing.
Today, Nazism, National Socialism, is rightly viewed as pure evil. But communism, another totalitarian ideology, far too many people view it as an idealistic endeavor that was just distorted by the cruel men who claim to be implementing it. I'm sorry, that's just plain wrong. Communism was and is pure evil down to its very core. Do you think there might be a good reason communism failed everywhere it's been tried? There's a reason that nearly 100 million people died at the hands of the communist experiment. Communism ignores fundamental human nature. We don't want to all be the same. Oh, we want equality of opportunity, but we don't want equality imposed on us. Human beings are competitive, and that's a good thing. It makes us strive to do bigger and better things. But Marx's equality could only be imposed on people, and that required raw force and coercion. It's no mistake that communism required a dictatorship that inevitably led to bloodshed and human misery. Great leaders like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher instinctively understood this. We rightly educate people about the legacy of Hitler and Nazis, but we seem to gloss over the brutal history of communism. There's something very wrong when people don't bat an eyelash at a Soviet-themed vodka bar or some punk walking down the street wearing a shirt adorned by Che Guevara, or a hammer and sickle for that matter. Now, to be clear, I do not support censorship. I support people's right to be as ignorant as they want. But I don't support whitewashing, the whitewashing of history. People, it killed nearly 100 million people. Now, do I think we're on the cusp of a red takeover in Canada? No. But I do fear discredited ideas bubbling back up to the surface as people forget. We shouldn't forget ever. As Reagan predicted, communism ended up in the ash heap of history, and rightly so. Let's make sure it stays that way. And that's the byline.